So welcome to Inherit Game Mode Blueprint. In this video we are going to inherit a game mode blueprint from a game mode. So I'm going to explain right now that hard coding means assets are actually written into the code. It would mean that we refer to something by its name and file path in the code. And the problem with that is that it's pretty hard to track changes. So the default pawn blueprint is an asset. We want to be able to rename that if necessary without worrying about updating all our code, as I've said there. So it's convenient to use Blueprint for this purpose. And what we're going to be doing is extending the C++ game mode that our project came with. By the way, why did it come with a C++ game mode? Because when we set the game up, we chose C++ game in the very beginning, right? And that gave us a C++ game mode, which we always want, because you can always just extend nothing with Blueprint. At least you've got the C++ there if you want it. Once you've started with Blueprint, you can't quite as easily add C++ before it. You have to inherit from C++ to Blueprint. And we will then ultimately be selecting our new default pawn. So by the end of it, what will happen when we play, if I play and, oops, here we go. If I play and then eject myself and then look at the pawn, a couple of things about it. Firstly, on details, we have a grabber component there coming by default, which is cool. And also we're proving that our code's getting called because we have grabber reporting for duty. So let's see how all that works. So welcome back. First thing I'm going to do is tidy up this pawn that I instantiated that's sitting here. Doesn't need to be sitting in my floor, so I'm going to delete that and just check where we are. We're in a situation where the default pawn is still spawning, but at least in our content browser we have access to a blueprint default pawn, and what we need to be able to do is actually set it under maps and modes. I know I'm repeating myself here, but this is important stuff. So first thing we're going to need is a blueprinted Building Escape game mode. So our Building Escape game mode at the moment is a C++ class, right? It's here. And yes, we can add behavior to that. And if it's going to be more natural to add it in code, we'll do that. But what we want to do is inherit a blueprint from this. So it's going to be a blueprint based on the Building Escape game.cpp, game mode.cpp. All right. In very much the same way that if we go into our content, we look at our default pawn. If you see me hover over that, you see how it says default class, parent class default pawn. So it's actually got a parent class already. It's just that it's not inside our code. It's actually in, well, let's go into Visual Studio and see where that's getting that from. It's not solution files that we have written. It is going to be right inside the engine. Okay, and you're going to have to dig right in to see where default pawn is. And let's do a little search in here. Default pawn.cpp, there's an example of it. So it's in the engine files. We don't want to mess with those, right? So that's why we are inheriting from the default pawn as a blueprint. We could also inherit from the default pawn as a C++ file and extend its behavior, but we're using blueprint. So we're going to do exactly the same thing for the game mode. So I want you to do that, actually. I think you can work it out with what we've learned so far. So make a game mode blueprint. Find the C++ game mode in the content browser. Create a blueprint class derived, inheriting from it. Set this as the default game mode in settings, project settings, maps and modes, okay? And make sure the game still runs the same what it did before. So go ahead, pause the video and see if you can make the game run off your game mode blueprint now. Okay, welcome back. So this is how I think we do it. We go find our C++ game mode, which is here, right click, create blueprint class based on Building Escape game mode. Cool. Now, what are we going to call it? Well, I'm going to give you a convention which we used before, which is just a suffix with BP, not CP, to say it's a blueprint. Create blueprint class. Wicked. There it is. There's the blueprint inspector. And one of the cool things in here is we can do it right away, actually, is we can set now the default pawn class, search for PAWN, to the blueprinted one that we made. Cool, hey? Compile. Remember I said when you change your blueprint, you click compile. And then close. Nearly there. Settings, project settings, maps and modes, default game mode, pick our blueprint, close. See what happens when we play. Now, how do we know if that's worked? Well, we can play and eject ourselves and have a look at the blueprint. Is this the one we're looking for? Click on it, look at details. Grabber. It's got a grabber on it. Woohoo! So we have changed the game mode to our own one. We've changed the default pawn, and now we've got a grabber. Why don't we go ahead and just make that grabber like report for duty, right? So we play, we eject, we take a look at our own body, we find the grabber, we open grabber.h, And then I'm going to go and find an existing UE log entry because I don't want to have to worry about remember the syntax. Although occasionally I'll challenge myself to remember the syntax, but there it is. Okay, going to go to grabber.h, go find grabber.cpp actually, because I need the implementation. And what I'm going to do in here is just on begin play, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to say, without any of these funny format parameters, I'm simply going to say grabber reporting for duty, exclamation mark. Okay, and then match the brackets. Let's immediately build this because I get quite nervous about macros because if we do get them wrong, then it's nearly impossible to fix. Because the error messages that you get from macros suck, I think is the technical term. i.e. they are inadequate to easily fix the problem. So here we go. It's built, which is fantastic. If we now go over, play the game again, and look, we can see down here in output log, grabber reporting for duty. I think we've achieved what we want to in this video. We have made a grabber actually appear and report. So what we can do moving forward now is to start to actually write the functionality into this grabber file. We'll have a grabber.h, which I'm going to arrange on the left-hand side, which basically is just boilerplate code at the moment. We have a constructor. It's prefixed it with U because that's Unreal's coding convention. We have a begin, play, and a tick component. And then in grabber.cpp, it's saying, yes, that it's ticking here. And by the way, as a simple tip, if you ever have any components that don't need to tick, i.e. that don't need to do everything every tick, then we would disable that for performance. But we're going to let this guy tick, which means that this tick component method will be called by the engine every single frame. Okay, we've logged out that we're beginning play, and what we're going to do down here is to start thinking about the very structure of how our grabber is going to work. So in the next in the next video, we'll pseudocode that up and then start actually making it happen. So see you there.